Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this very wonderful Wednesday afternoon. And we have a few things to talk about in this segment. So the first thing we are going to talk about is the Knicks and their recent win against the Pacers in the first segment. Then in the second segment, we are going to talk about the Denver Nuggets and their game against the Timberwolves, how they completely dominated against them, and just overall like the stories around that game. Then in the third segment, we are going to cover Caitlin Clark's debut in the WNBA. She just made her debut yesterday, so we're going to go ahead and look into that. Then in the fourth segment, we are also going to look at Nick Young's comments about the Lakers and them losing the series and why he thinks they lost the series. We also have the special fifth segment at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, let's go right ahead and talk about the Knicks going up 3-2 in the series. And I'm just adjusting the title right there. So yeah, you see the Knicks? You see those New York Knicks out there? I hope you saw them. I bet you did. They completely destroyed the Pacers at home. This was a completely different team. This Knicks team was a completely different team, and the Pacers team was also a completely different team. These two teams, they play very, very differently when they're away, and more so the Pacers than the Knicks, in my personal opinion. Like, the Knicks, they played really bad in Game 4, but that was really like the only game away where they played egregiously bad. And most of the time throughout all the playoffs this year, they've played very well away. Granted, the performance that they had away against Philly was influenced by the fact that there were so many Knicks fans in that crowd, so maybe that also had something to do with it. But this game right here, definitely a statement game coming in from the Knicks, saying, like, they responded perfectly to how the Pacers completely destroyed them and walked over them in Game 4. They were not going to take it lightly whatsoever. Jalen Brunson, he ended the game with 44 points, which, again, opens up the discussion for him being the best point guard in the NBA right now. I mean, 44 points is just absolutely insane. He was ridiculous in the fourth quarter as well. And really, the entirety of this game was looking at the recap of this game, the Knicks, they dominated the entirety of this game. There was not a single point where the Knicks scored less than the Pacers in any quarter. The Pacers also had a little bit of a stretch where they didn't score for 7 minutes. Now, given how high-powered and how potent their offense is, not scoring in 7 minutes is unacceptable if you are the Pacers. And this just goes back to what I've been saying about the Pacers and what I've said their big problem was in the playoffs, and that would be their defense, because like they had no response on the offensive side of the ball. And when you don't have any response on the offensive side of the ball, you got to play some defense, and they just couldn't do that either. The final score was 121-91. So again, the Knicks, they completely smacked them, ran in just a perfect response to the Pacers smacking them in Game 4. And now they're up 3-2 in this series, which is the perfect position that the Knicks have to be in. And because if the Knicks would have gone down 3-2, I think it would have been, if the Knicks would have been the ones down 3-2, I think the series would have been over and would have ended in Game 6. But now they put themselves in a very good position to win this series in either 6 games or win it in 7, which is exactly what they needed. So, again, Pacers, they shot very, very poorly. Halliburton regressed back to the same Halliburton that was playing rather poorly compared to how he was playing in game 3 and 4. Again, all the Pacers, they play a lot better at home than they do away. And Halliburton, he had 13 points. Pascal Siakam had 22 points. Miles Turner had 16 points. And again, everybody shot. It's not like, okay, I can't really say that they shot poorly, but their offense still wasn't as potent as we're used to seeing it. 12 for 27 from 3, that's 44%. And like, again, 44% isn't bad. It just wasn't enough against the Knicks. And it's not like the Knicks shot any better from 3 either. They shot 12 for 35 from 3, but the biggest difference was the offensive rebounding for the Knicks. They had way more offensive rebounds in this game than the entirety of the Pacers team. Josh Hart, he ended the game with 11 rebounds, and Isaiah Hartenstein ended the game with 17 rebounds. Like, and this is just how the Knicks play. Like, they're a very gritty and tough team to go up against. They will always go after the second chance points, and that really seems like that's been their offense throughout the entirety of the postseason. They take a shot, and then somebody gets a ridiculous offensive board, which leads to an open shot for somebody else, because everybody else is either trying to crash or just not paying attention. Like, it's the fact that they continue to play through the game no matter what with Hart, and you see what I did there with Hart, and surprisingly, Hart actually sat on the bench for once. Like, that's very surprising, and it looks like Thibodeau is adjusting his rotations slightly, because Alec Burks, he wasn't in the Knicks rotation before, and now here he is playing 23 minutes. Like, it really seems that Thibodeau is adjusting certain players and their minutes in the postseason, because he realizes that it's not entirely working. Granted, Josh Hart is not opposed to playing 48 minutes. He said that before in countless interviews. He even said there was at one point where in an interview where he said, all the people that are working full-time jobs, those are the real workers, and we're just playing a game. And he gained a lot of respect from several different fans who actually hold these jobs and realize that Josh Hart is willing to play all the minutes in all of these games. Like, that's obviously going to earn you a lot of respect when you're playing in an era where load managing is a very huge thing, and a lot of the players would rather sit out and check on their health as opposed to playing huge minutes in a very crucial game for their team. Josh Hart is completely different from that. Regardless, Thibodeau is adjusting and fixing the rotations, and so far, I really like how he's adjusting these rotations. Granted, it might be because they were up by so much, but Alec Burks was playing in the previous game. Now, again, this might be influenced because both games resulted in blowouts. Therefore, whenever a team blows another team out, usually the coach brings in everybody coming off the bench. And we saw it in this game where some of the players that came off the bench, they never touched the court before, but they only played like about 3 minutes, aside from Precious and Alec Burks, who played 23 minutes. So the rotations, they're looking so much better, especially with Alec Burks in the rotation. He's a very competent scorer, and the Knicks definitely need someone else other than Brunson doing the scoring. I mean, Burks had 18 points and was 6 for 11 from the field. And DiVincenzo, while he is a pretty good option for the scoring, he's not as consistent as I'd hope for the Knicks. I mean, in this game, he shot 4 for 14 and had 8 points. But regardless, a win is a win is a win. So, doesn't matter how badly you played if you're on the Knicks. You won the game. End of story. Let's go Knicks. We love to see it. Bias aside, they played so good in this game, and it's their defense on the Pacers, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It was more so the Pacers missing a lot of shots and not scoring enough and not doing enough or not producing enough. And now the Knicks, they're up 3-2 in the series, and they're expected to go back to Indiana to play Game 6. We will shortly see the results of that game in a few days. I think the Knicks are going to close it out. I think the Knicks are going to close it out in Game 6, just like they closed out Philly in Game 6. And I understand that like they got blown out really badly in Game 4. But they did not play that bad in Game 3 when they were also in Indiana. Like, I mean, it took a ridiculous step-back three-pointer for the Pacers to win that game. Like, a 1 in a million shot of going in. It took that for the Pacers to win that game. And it's not like the Knicks played poorly in that game either. I mean, they played just as good as the Pacers did. It just came down to that final shot that determined the game. And when I think about that, I just think that, like, okay, I mean, they just had a really bad game in Game 4, and the Pacers were just really good in Game 4, and that happens. Now, it's not a consistent thing, given how in Game 3 the game was really, really close, and it came down to a ridiculous step-back three to win the game. But that's all I have to say about this game and the Knicks and the series. Hopefully we'll see the Knicks win in Game 6. Let's go Knicks. And with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I'll go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about the Nuggets and the Timberwolves in their playoff series. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to talk about the Denver Nuggets going up 3-2 in this series against the Timberwolves. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Denver Nuggets going up 3-2 in this series and the ridiculous performance coming in from Jokic and really just the storylines behind this game. I mean, first off, I'm just going to say Jokic played absolutely phenomenally in this game. I mean, like, he was just a beast. I mean, look at that right there. Air Nikola talking. What is you talking about? Like, Rudy Gobert cannot guard Jokic. Like, straight up cannot guard him. It is And you would expect like a defensive player of the year to put up somewhat of a good matchup against the MVP. Like literally defensive player of the year, MVP, head to head. And it's like you'd think that the defensive player of the year would have something to say against the MVP and at least hinder him a little bit. But no, Jokic just toyed with him and acted as if he was just any other normal center in the NBA. Like, I don't know what it is. Rudy Gobert cannot check him. Jokic shot 15 for 22 from the field. He had 40 points and 13 assists. Nothing that Rudy Gobert was doing could have stopped him, like, whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. And, like, we've seen this in previous years when Rudy Gobert was still on Utah and Nikola Jokic was on Denver. When they were in the bubble, Utah, they were up 3-1, but because of Nikola Jokic's performances and Jamal Murray along with that as well, they had no answer and they ended up blowing the 3-1 lead. Jokic has always dominated against Rudy Gobert. And what's even funnier is at one point in that performance, like at one point in the bubble or at some point in the NBA season, I don't exactly remember exactly when that was, but it was a while ago. Rudy Gobert said, "I got Jokic," and then Jokic was like, "Brother, I got 40 points." Like, he cannot check him. That's one. Two, I feel like a lot of fans in the NBA right now, they were sort of on the hype train for the Timberwolves. Like, they were very, very quick to calling Anthony Edwards the next Michael Jordan. Very, very quick. And it's sort of like, I feel like they may have jumped the gun a little bit. And now that they jumped the gun, the Nuggets, all of a sudden, they're up 3-2 in the series. Like, I'm not going to pin this entirely on Anthony Edwards, obviously, because that would be ridiculous and absurd. But in this performance, in this game, he shot 5 for 15 from the field, and he had 18 points. Now, aside from Anthony Edwards, there's really nothing on the Timberwolves that's really consistent offensively, at least in this series. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, he shot 10 for 19 from the field, which is, it's not that bad, but, I mean, 10 for 19, that's a lot of shots for only 23 points. And, excuse me. But regardless, it was still a relatively good game. He did shoot over 50% from the field, so I can't say much about it. But the rest of the team, Alexander Walker, he went 5 for 12. Jaden McDaniels, 4 for 9. Naz Reid, 3 for 8. Monte Morris, 3 for 6. And again, Anthony Edwards' 5 for 15 was, it wasn't all that. Especially, like, considering how we call him the next Michael Jordan, and everyone's calling him the next Michael Jordan, the next Kobe Bryant, whatever you want to call it. This was a very underwhelming performance, especially in a game where they desperately needed it. Granted, series is not over yet. They go to the Minnesota in Game 6, so there is a possibility that Anthony Edwards will show up in this game and prove his importance and prove the prowess that he's the next Kobe Bryant, the next Michael Jordan, whatever you want to call it. But I definitely feel like they jumped the gun when hyping up the Timberwolves. And now, since they jumped the gun, the Nuggets took advantage of that, and they're up 3-2 in this series. Granted, this wasn't the fans' fault, obviously. I think the coaching staff from the Denver Nuggets is just incredibly competent, and they came up with a really good strategy to sort of slow down the rest of the Timberwolves and their offense. And it's proven effective in this game and in the series. Jamal Murray, he didn't really play that well in this game. I mean, well, I'm going to rephrase that. He didn't have much offensive production in this game like we're used to, but when he did get his shots, he made them count. He shot 50% from the field and had 16 points. Surprisingly, he didn't take a single three-pointer. I'm very surprised by that. I feel like Jamal Murray should be taking a lot more threes than the rest of the players on this team. Like, and as a whole, the team took 19 three-pointers. Like, that's in this era right now, that's rather low. And it just shows how dominant Jokic was throughout the entirety of this game, scoring with all the points inside. Same with Aaron Gordon, 7 for 14 from the field with 18 points. And again, 0 3-pointers because most of the shots were inside shots and, like, you know, inside the arc. And the fact that they're winning, taking all of these shots inside the arc, is just as astonishing as shooting the lights out against somebody, against another team. Because, again, this team has a lot of centers and a lot of big men that can protect the paint. And here they are making them almost a non-factor. Rudy Gobert, like, he didn't play that bad in this game. Like, he didn't play bad at all, actually. He shot 7 for 7 from the field, and he had 18 points. Very, very impressive, obviously. But it was his defense that was the problem, surprisingly, given, I know, it's like the defensive player of the year. His biggest problem tonight was the defense. But when you're guarding Jokic, I mean, what else can you really do? Like, Jokic's game is just, and the reason why I'm looking off to the side is because I'm looking at the box scores right now. But Jokic's game is just, it's unguardable. Like, I mean, Rudy Gobert cannot guard this man, and Jokic has wiped the floor with him several times. It was only a matter of time before the Nuggets got into a rhythm and eventually come out and expose the Timberwolves. Now, I knew the series wasn't over after the Timberwolves won those 2 away games. I knew that the Nuggets were most definitely going to fight. But I didn't expect the results to turn this quickly in the series. I will admit it and say I did not expect the results to turn this quickly. Like, I would have assumed that the Nuggets would fall under a 3-1 hole, but they ended up tying the series before, and now they're up 3-2 in the series, which is very important if you are the Denver Nuggets. So now they move on. Well, they're going to move on and play in Minnesota with the hopes of closing the series out in Game 6, similar to how the Knicks are going to the Pacers and are expected to close out in Game 6 as well. And I feel like I have a feeling that the Timberwolves, they aren't going to go down easy, and this series is going to go to 7 games. I wouldn't be surprised if this series goes to 7 games due to Anthony Edwards and his brilliance. I did say that the fans jumped the gun, but I am not going to say that his performances in the postseason are anything short of extraordinary, because he's been performing very well in the games that they've been winning. So, playing at home, he also had 44 points in the last home game that they played. It just wasn't enough to beat the Denver Nuggets. So I have a feeling that his performance in this series and in the next game is going to be far different than his performance in this game, thus pushing the series to 7 games and having the deciding game in Denver. That's my prediction for the series, and I feel like that's where this series is going to end up going. And the Timberwolves, they really need to figure out how to stop Jokic. They got to figure it out. Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year, he's got to figure out how to stop him. And he hasn't been able to figure out how to stop him for the longest time. So that's all I have to say about this segment and these games that were going on. So we are out of time in the second segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment where we shift our focus to the WNBA. The WNBA game started yesterday. I'm only going to focus on one game because, to be quite frank with you, I only watched one game last night because the playoffs were happening last night. And I've said previously how I just don't like how the WNBA season has to start right when the playoffs are starting. Because, again, I was watching the playoff games before I was watching the WNBA games. Or, like, I only watched one WNBA game, and you guys know exactly what game that is. That was Caitlin Clark's debut, and that's exactly what the game that we're going to talk about. So I will be right back after this short break to talk about Caitlin's debut.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to talk about Caitlin Clark's debut. Just had to adjust the title for a little bit. And I'm very surprised by the sort of results of this game. And I'm actually very surprised with the performance that Caitlin had in this game. Let me just go ahead and adjust the image real quick so that way it's centered. It's really difficult to have these centered before the meeting, so I apologize for that. Those of you on the audio side, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but so this debut game, it was very underwhelming. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for anybody. She played terribly. She was very bad in this game. Caitlin Clark played poorly. She shot 5 for 15 from the field, and she set a WNBA record for the most turnovers in a debut game with 10. And that's really, really bad. That's not a good record to set in your first WNBA game or in any kind of basketball game whatsoever. That is a very, very bad game. It was very bad, and it was clear that she was struggling in this game against the Connecticut Sun and their defense. Like, the Suns' defense was considered to be one of the best defenses in the previous year. So it's really not shocking at the fact that they were able to play really good defense. And Caitlin was even more shocked as well. This was a very bad game from her. She was incredibly rattled, and the women that were guarding her, they flashed double teams on her. They checked her up. They were staying in her face, making everything just that much difficult against Caitlin. And I feel like Caitlin was sort of taken aback by the defense in this game and the defense that she was forced to deal with. And that's okay. Like, that's normal. You expect this to happen to a rookie because, like, you still have to adjust. And you still have to understand how the game is played in the WNBA or in the big leagues. That's what we're going to call it. You still have to sort of understand how the big leagues work. And given that it's your first time in the big leagues, obviously you're going to struggle. This was the exact same thing that happened with Victor Wembanyama and his debut as a rookie. Everybody was so quick to write him off as a bust due to one bad performance, or like a couple of bad performances that he had in the beginning of the season. And here he is winning unanimous Rookie of the Year. And this happens to a lot of rookies in the NBA. They start out rather slow because they have to adjust to the NBA and the fact that all of these players are great, and you're not just going up against college students now, you're going up against the best of the best athletes in the sport. And it takes time to adjust, especially Caitlin's situation, because she got drafted and now she's expected to handle the offense. She's expected to be the catalyst for the Indiana Fever and drive them to greatness. That is a lot of pressure to be put on a rookie that just got drafted. A lot of pressure to be put on a rookie. And like all that pressure, it's going to affect her in the beginning of the season and the beginning of the first few games, because that pressure is going to affect everybody. And you're not going to be, there's nobody in the league anymore that's going to be, boom, just as good the minute they set foot on the court. No one is going to immediately be Hall of Fame caliber. No one is LeBron James. Like, LeBron in his debut scored 25 points, and that's why I say, like, no one is going to be LeBron James in the debut of the NBA. Even Michael Jordan, he only had like 16 points as a rookie in the very first game that he played. And like, it just takes time for a lot of these rookies to adjust. So while I am saying that she played very poorly, I don't think she's a bust. Like, I'm just telling you I'm just telling you guys how it is. And it's like, there's no other way to say it other than she played poorly. And some people are probably going to like bubble wrap her and just say she played pretty well. It was a pretty good game, this, that, and the other. No, it wasn't a good game. Going 5 for 15 from the field and having 10 turnovers is not a good game. And yes, she did score 20 points, but that's still not a good game. 20 points on 15 shots is not a good game whatsoever. Like, especially with the 10 turnovers, you can't have 10 turnovers and only have 20 points. That's just not ideal, like, whatsoever. Because you're giving the other team more possessions than you are scoring on the side of the ball. So it's like nothing is canceling out there. You're only doing harm for your team with all of those turnovers. And again, it's really difficult to adjust from college to the WNBA in the big leagues. A lot of women have said this before. I didn't expect her to come out dominating every single woman in the sport, obviously, because that's just ridiculous. But I also didn't really expect her to play this badly with all the turnovers that she got. But this might be like a wake-up call that she needed, because like, okay, now I'm in the big leagues. There's so much pressure on me. There's like a target on my back with all these WNBA teams looking down on me. I need to fix that. That's sort of what this game was. It was a wake-up call, and nothing more to it, nothing less to it. The game wasn't really that close at all, and the fourth quarter was really the deciding factor of this game, where the Fever got outscored 27-14. And again, with all of this in mind, it just falls on to Caitlin, and Caitlin was the big reason why they lost this game. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, because this is how you get better. This is how players get better, and this is how we as people get better. You have to fail, and you have to hear the criticism that you did fail. So that way you can learn from the criticism, and not only that, you can learn from your failure to ensure that that doesn't happen again. The greatest teacher is failure, and you're not going to get anywhere if you haven't failed. So this is normal, and that's okay, the fact that she played bad. She just needs to learn how to roll with those punches and deal with it. It's plain and simple. And this is what a lot of NBA players have to go through as well. So she's sort of getting that exact same treatment from the media. So it's showing the shift in attention towards women's sports and women's basketball now that it's being marketed a lot more and a lot easier. But again, you're not going to get anywhere in the WNBA, and you're not going to get anywhere in life if you don't fail at least a couple of times. And that's okay. We're human. That's the point. We're supposed to fail. It's how we respond to the failure that makes us different from everyone else. Because she could respond to this two different ways. One, oh, this is too hard, I'm going to give up, and just this, that, and the other. Or, I played really badly in this game. I had 10 turnovers. I got to clean that up. I got to fix it. I got to go into the film room, see what I did wrong, and work on my game, work on my shot, try to get better. This is what failure does. And I have a feeling that she's going to use the latter, the second option, the second thing that I just said, to get better. Unlike certain NBA players that I just absolutely despise, who don't want to change their game and don't want to get better whatsoever and want to continue stealing money from organizations and coming off the bench. Ben Simmons. But with that out of the way, we are out of time with this third segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fourth segment where I talk about Swaggy P. In case you guys have no idea who that is, that's Nick Young's nickname. I'm going to talk about Swaggy P's opinion on the Lakers and why they lost in the series against the Denver Nuggets in the first round. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to talk about Nick Young's comments towards the Los Angeles Lakers and why he feels... Oh, Jesus Christ, I just moved the title back down there. Excuse me. Let me just put that back up here. There we go. And again, in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about Swaggy P and his comments towards the Lakers and why he feels like the Lakers ended up losing in this playoff series and exactly what went wrong in his eyes. And I guarantee you guys are questioning the image that's on my left right now. And well, my left, your right, depending on the perspective. But I'm just pulling up the quote right now and you guys will greatly understand like why I chose this image. And but Nick Young's comments, he said they depended on D'Lo, and that's just, you're asking to lose right there, placing your faith in that. What do you expect? They put their faith in the snitch, and the snitch let you down. So if you guys are hardcore NBA fans, you know exactly why this image right here is the one that's popping up. So Swaggy P, he was teammates with D'Angelo Russell before when he was on the Lakers, and when they were both on the Lakers, when they both started out as young guys in the league. And at the time, he was dating Iggy Azalea. And D'Angelo Russell found out that Swaggy P was cheating on Iggy. And as opposed to, rather than keeping it a secret, because, you know, they're teammates and they're boys, and that's usually what you expect them to do, to keep secrets, because, you know, bros before not going to finish that final sentence, but you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But he ended up tweeting this out and exposing Swaggy P for cheating on Iggy Azalea. Essentially, he snitched on him. And ever since then, they've had a really shaky relationship. They've had a really bad... They don't like each other. They really don't like each other whatsoever. And it just immediately goes back to the fact that D'Angelo Russell decided to expose Swaggy P instead of keep his secret from Iggy Azalea. And that's really where the argument stems. And that's really why, like, he just took this opportunity to trash on D'Lo for and he's still obviously a little bit salty at the fact that D'Lo snitched on him. And I mean, I'd be really salty too if somebody snitched on me and it caused me to break up with Iggy Azalea. But like, regardless, he was cheating. So I really don't understand like what he expected. Like, you can't be mad at anyone but yourself at that point. But I do somewhat understand like where he's coming from, because they are teammates and you'd expect the teammates to like keep everything sort of confidential and just let them rock just for the sake of the team. And not only that, like, even with guys, like, I know that there are several guys who would keep like something quiet and keep a secret from other women, at the fact that, like, if men are cheating, if your best friend is cheating and you're a guy, chances are you aren't going to get involved in that. I mean, personally, I wouldn't get involved in that simply because it's not any of my business. And I feel like that's sort of what Nick Young's intentions were. Like, I mean, it's none of D'Angelo Russell's business, so there's no need for D'Lo to go and exposing him. And I guess that sort of rubbed Nick Young the wrong way. But regardless, he did something wrong, and you really shouldn't be upset at him for something as meaningless as that, especially when you're Swaggy P. I mean, like, you were an NBA player at the time. You could have gotten with anyone that you wanted. It really didn't matter. But regardless, this was sort of the biggest reason as to why, like, Nick Young believes that the Lakers lost, simply because they put their faith in D'Lo, and he's half right. Like, his reasoning for why he doesn't have faith in D'Lo is wrong, but the fact that the Lakers were relying on D'Lo isn't wrong. Like, the Lakers, they were obvious, and like, who wouldn't rely on D'Lo if you were the Lakers at that point? D'Lo was being very, very productive offensively throughout the end of the regular season. However, come the postseason, he played horribly. And I scream it because it's like, as a LeBron fan, this happens every single time. When LeBron gets in the playoffs, his teammates, they look like they're going to be good, but then in the playoffs, they forget how to play basketball. It happens every single time. D'Lo had 0 points in Game 3. 0. And obviously, that is not going to help the Lakers win at all when your third option is scoring 0. Like, it really upsets me. It gets me mad. It boils my blood, because he was supposed to be the third option. He was supposed to be the player to rely on, and he scored 0. Like, I have no words. I have absolutely no words. But he isn't wrong. The fact that the Lakers had to rely on someone like that, it was proven to not work. Because, like, it just showed that he wasn't reliable in the postseason. And again, like, his reasoning for it was completely wrong. Simply because he snitched on you isn't a valid reason to sort of negate a player and the playoff success that they have, or whatever is going on in their life. And, like, again, them relying on D'Lo, it was the reason why they ended up failing. Because D'Lo, again, he was supposed to be that third option behind when LeBron is tired and when he can't necessarily run the offense completely. They needed another option, and D'Lo was that other option, but he let them down. And honestly, that's sort of why Nick Young has that mindset on D'Lo. Like, D'Lo is always going to let the team down, simply because he let him down. Like, D'Lo let Nick Young down, because as a teammate, Nick Young didn't really expect D'Lo to go out there and snitch on him like that, and he let him down in a sense. So it makes a little bit of sense that there's a lack of trust and why there's so much beef between the two. But aside from that, I wouldn't be surprised if D'Lo like responds to this criticism from Swaggy P eventually. So I'll update you guys on that if that does happen. But that's basically the biggest reason as to why Nick Young just doesn't trust him whatsoever. And if only he said this before. Like, if he would have said this before they lost, then maybe I wouldn't think that he was entirely butthurt. But the fact that he had to say this after they lost, it only proves the notion that Swaggy P is still upset and still really mad at what D'Lo did to him all those years ago. And again, like I said before, I'd hold a grudge too if Iggy Azalea found out that I was cheating because of the fact that D'Lo told her. But regardless, I wouldn't cheat on Iggy anyway. Like, I wouldn't have done the deed anyway. And if you don't want anyone to find something out, don't do it. It's that simple. And he brought this on himself. And this has sort of been like the big headline with Swaggy P. Like, whenever you think Swaggy P, you immediately think Iggy Azalea and D'Lo. Like, he even has a championship ring, and you don't even think about the fact that he was on a championship team. You only think about the scandal with Iggy and D'Lo and the snitching that they were doing. But that's basically all I have, and I just thought these comments were interesting simply because, like, I mean, he's really hurt. He's really hurt at the fact that D'Lo ended up telling everyone, that literally the entire world with his tweet, that Iggy was being cheated on. So it's unfortunate for him, but then again, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. So with that, we are out of time for this fourth segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the special fifth segment, where we talk about the Brooklyn Nets retiring Vince Carter's number. They just announced this, like, no less than I'd say maybe like 30 minutes ago, maybe even an hour. I got an ESPN notification about an hour ago. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what I think, because Vince Carter, he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and T-Mac is going to be giving him a Hall of Fame speech. So I will be right back after this short break talking about the jersey retirement. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, I really got to get used to saying fifth segment, we are going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets retiring Vince Carter's number. Hold on just one second as I put the title up on the screen real quick. There we go. So the Nets, they're going to retire Vince Carter's jersey, and honestly, that's really I have absolutely zero problem with the Nets retiring Vince's jersey. I mean, he was on the New Jersey Nets and he was a phenomenal player. There was a little bit of a problem between him and the Raptors where he played rather poorly towards the final end of his stint with Toronto, and he wanted to get traded. He wanted to get out of Toronto. So then Toronto decided to trade him, and then the minute he goes to New Jersey and plays for the Nets, he plays like the exact same player that the Raptors wanted him to play like on the Raptors, but he just wasn't playing like that. So there's a little bit of bad blood between him. There was a little bit of a problem between him and the Raptors at that point in his career. But even with that, I'm very surprised that the Nets announced that they were going to retire his jersey before the Toronto Raptors announced that they were going to retire his jersey. The Raptors are one of the only teams in the NBA that have no jerseys retired up in their rafters. Up in their rafters. They have zero. And the fact that the Nets announced that they were going to retire his jersey quicker than the Raptors is a little bit insulting, in my opinion. If we're talking about the Raptors perspective. Obviously, if we're talking about from the Nets perspective, this is incredibly respectful. This is just putting respect on a great player. Air Canada. I mean, he's literally the best dunker that the NBA has ever seen. And you gotta put respect on that man's name, especially now that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. No one should be allowed to wear that number on the Nets or on the Raptors for that matter. But the fact that the Raptors didn't announce it before the Nets has me slightly confused. Why wouldn't they do that? He is arguably the franchise's best player. Again, arguably. I would say there is an argument for Kawhi Leonard being the best Raptors player ever, given how Kawhi Leonard won the championship with the Raptors, the only championship that the Raptors have, and the Finals MVP as well. But he only played 1 year with the Raptors. So you can't say that Kawhi is the best Raptor ever when he only played 1 year. It's just the fact that he won the only championship in franchise history that gives him that boost and that respect, which he rightfully deserves. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve that respect, but the title as the best Raptor, it's most likely going to go to Vince Carter, simply because of his tenure with the Raptors and how long he's played with the Raptors. And I'm still very surprised that the Raptors haven't decided to retire his jersey. If anything, he should have been the first jersey that they retired the minute he did retire. And Vince had a very, very, very long career. He's played in 4 decades in the NBA, the only player to play in 4 decades of the NBA. And again, that his title and his accomplishments demand respect. And the fact that the Raptors aren't giving it to him when he had his best years on the Raptors is a little bit insulting, in my opinion. And I expect the Raptors to announce his jersey retirement shortly, or in a couple of days, given how the Nets already announced his jersey retirement. But again, I have no problem with the Nets announcing his jersey retirement. Zero problem with that whatsoever. I apologize for rubbing my nose so often. It's just the allergies are killing me out here. But regardless, again, the Nets rightfully deserve to retire Vince Carter's jersey. And the Raptors, they should retire his jersey as well. But, I'm very surprised that they didn't. And Vince, he was also a very good three-point shooter with his time on the New Jersey Nets. They didn't make it that far in the playoffs when he was on the when he was on the Nets, unfortunately for him. But regardless, I mean, I'm very surprised that the Raptors just don't retire his jersey. I'm very, very surprised. They don't have any jerseys retired, so why wait? And I do understand that, like, again, he didn't make it that far. He only made it, like, as far as the second round with the New Jersey Nets. But aside from that, he played phenomenally for the New Jersey Nets, and he was a very, very, very good player when he was on Toronto as well. I mean, he made, again, they didn't really make it that far in the postseason when on either the Nets or on Toronto, but he was still a force to be reckoned with, and he's still Air Canada. I mean, literally, he had a postseason where he averaged, I'm just looking at the numbers right now, he averaged 30 points per game in the postseason at one point, shot 47% from the field, 42% from three, and 84% from the free throw line. This was in the series against Philly in 2001. And obviously, Philly went on to make the finals and lose to the Lakers in that year, but still, he played very, very well against this Philly team. It's just, it wasn't enough. But aside from that, his time with New Jersey, again, nothing short of impressive. They didn't play well. They didn't get that far in the postseason, but, you know, nothing short of impressive what he did. Like, absolutely nothing wrong with and most of the time when he did get far in the postseason, they would lose to the eventual champions. Like, and that's nothing short of amazing. Like, there's really no argument for that, and I'm very surprised that the Raptors don't retire it. I think it's very disrespectful. But that's all I really have to say about the Nets retiring his jersey. It's very well deserved. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame this year, and T-Mac is going to be presenting he's going to be giving a speech for Vince Carter. If you guys don't know, Vince Carter and T-Mac, they are cousins. And obviously, like, given how they could fly and given how they could shoot the ball, like, with the lights out, it makes total sense that they'd be cousins, like, without a doubt. But that's really all I gotta say about this segment. And with that out of the way, that's basically the end of the show. So thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us. So please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It really helps the show if you donate to the show. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself and you guys. Could maybe look at some comments and some of the things that you guys have to say while I'm live on the show and change the subject just a little bit. But that's all I have for this segment for today, and that's it for the show. So thank you all for tuning in. Once again, I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't